Alright, hey everyone, this is gonna be the playthroughs and analysis on Izzet Control. Now, I don't know what happens, the Magic Online replay system is not so great, so for whatever reason, I only got some games saved, some not saved. And then they wouldn't show up in replays on the completed list, but I have two games here, two matches I played against Izzet Control, and actually this saved game 1 and the other one saved game 2 from this matchup. So I figured we would just go through these, and it would at least give you an idea. And it's almost better. I considered doing a live recording of an Izzet Control, but it can be a very long matchup. This deck here is made to survive, and the Izzet deck is also kind of a mid-range to late game deck. So this was the first game I got here. Not a bad hand. I can get a Skyfisher out on turn 2 for the cost of, the mana, but it's not always a good play. I did, in the other Izzet Control game, play it on turn 2 and bounce a land. It kind of sucks to slow yourself down like that, but I had to mulligan to 4 cards because I got no land hands until that point. So let's see how this goes. You're usually going to end up with this play where you do a turn 1 basic or terramorphic, and turn 2 Ravnica land. At this point in time, you can playing the Skyfisher is still going to slow you down on mana, but if you want to kind of fit spells in the early game against Izzet Control, and any control deck for that matter. You want to look for any opportunity where they're tapped out and you can get something through a counterspell. At this point, it didn't really work. I figured I would make a go of it because they only had 1 island. This deck was running Prohibit, though. So now we're looking good. I can put down a Rift Watcher and get the other Ravnica land into play. Now, I consider this to be a pretty decent matchup. I wouldn't say like a good matchup where you're going to win a majority of the time, but it is still a matchup that I think you're going to win way more than 50%. That's even post-sideboarding. It just gets better because you can bring in so many options against it, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. So you're getting the card draw up, bringing out the lands. I got a Missionary that's going to come about. This Nausea is going to be a useless card. Most Izzet Control decks are working on a creature package that is mainly Mole Drifters. And at most they run about 9 creatures, so this is not going to help really. Maybe if I get arrows I can use it to slow something down, but most of the creature kill in game 1 is not going to be useful to you. That's why I said game 2 and 3 are probably a much better chance. You get the land here, getting the Mole Drifters, trying to throw it into play, but it's really tricky against these matchups. You do have to be aware of their counter package. It usually includes things like Condescend, Counterspell, Mana Leak. The occasional one will run Force Spike, but that's mostly something you're going to see in a mono blue deck instead. You can try your best to draw out counters. I mean, really, just playing this deck how it's supposed to be played is going to draw out counters. There's a lot of good stuff in this deck, so they're going to want to stop you at every turn. We did have a deep analysis in the graveyard to keep this going. Now, one of the other reasons that this is kind of a tough matchup in game 1 is one of the biggest issues against this deck, there's another counterspell, is going to be Capsize. And I believe you see that in this game here. But Capsize becomes big trouble because I've talked in some of my other videos about how this deck really does well once you have mana on the table. In a lot of cases, that means you're getting multiple Ravnica lands. So if your opponent starts repeatedly bouncing those lands, then you're stuck. It's really gonna hurt you. But all you can do is keep playing game 1 and do your best to stop that from happening. Here he is. Yeah, he searches out. You can see he used the Mystical Teaching. He searches out the Capsize. He knows that that's going to be a big part of this game plan, is getting rid of those. All you can do in game 1, really, like I said, is to just do your best and play it. with unlike like the Fissure matchup where they can bounce and you still have the opportunity to get a 2 mana cost play in. With the Cloud Posts and the buyback on Capsize, he's going to be able to keep your board clear probably 98% of the time. There's not much you can do about it in Game 1. Game 2, you can bring in the negates and the dispels and really hope that balances things out. Kind of hold one in hand to stop that. Usually they will completely tap out. They'll save it till the end of your turn, as you see here, completely tap out so they can counter or they can cast the Capsize. And so what you'll want to do is wait for them to tap out, even if it means they return a land or two before you do it, to play that counter spell so that you can make sure that it's stopped and it goes to grave. But you do have to worry about, there are some versions, though not all versions, that run the wall, and the wall will allow them to return it to their hand. So just be aware of that as well. The bogs can help with that. Bogs are actually pretty decent in this matchup because you do get a lot of things that are buyback. Some run, I think, twice. That's mostly mono blue, though. You do get the Firebolts in this one, though that is not uncommon. But you have Teachings, the occasional Deep Analysis, stuff like that, that can get flashed back that you will be able to remove with the bogs. So they're actually pretty decent in this matchup. You see my opponent here, he's pretty much skipping play on his turn so that he can leave mana open for counter spells, as well as leaving mana open for repeated use of Capsize. And that's really going to hurt me, but I'm going to try my best to get whatever possible I can onto the battlefield before he returns all my lands. This is where it gets tough. I mean, you see he bounced my Ravnica lands. In order to get those in play, I'm going to have to return a land. So my mana count isn't, I mean, my land count isn't going up. My mana count is, but it's a really tricky situation to be in. Now here he uses Rolling Thunder early to try and kill off my creatures. I think it's a bit of a hasty move on his part because he's still quite, high in life. He's almost at 20, and you run 4 Glimmer Posts, you're going to go up. The Riftwatcher is going to die and after 2 attacks. I think it was kind of a waste of a Rolling Thunder, in my opinion. Maybe he was trying to draw out this blink, trying to draw out a counterspell or something like that, but not sure. Can't tell you what his intentions were, but he does get the prohibit off on the blink. The creatures do die, and casting that blink again is going to be a little more troublesome because it's coming from grave. So I'm going to be required to have much more mana open to do it, and that's tough in a matchup where he's going to keep capsizing my lands. So you got the Fume Spitter out. Like I said, at this point you're kind of you're playing everything you possibly can just so that you can prevent the Capsizes from being too much of an impact. That means, the arrows are going to come down, even though I know he's only running at this point the Muldrifter package. Most of them will run, Muldrifters, a couple Oracles, and like 1 Crusher. However, it's not really prevalent in this version of the deck. My opponent seems to be running just Muldrifters, and I don't know, maybe he played a wall, but I'm not totally positive on that one. But you see, again, he's coming every play, leaving all his mana open, and he's going to just keep capsizing. And there's nothing really I can do. If he decided to target Fume Spitter, then I would have the opportunity to sacrifice it, and Capsize would be countered because of the no legal targets. Unfortunately, he's not that stupid. You can run into parts of this matchup where he may choose to use Capsize on his own Muldrifter, something like that. And then in response, you can use Echoing Decay or Snuff Out to try and kill it. At this point, you would probably, if you were in that state there where he's mostly tapped out, but he's got mana open for a counter, use the Echoing Decay to try and kill the Muldrifter in response to the Capsize. He's going to counterspell it, but you still have the Snuff Out. You want to do it that way because you did not have the mana open to actually pay the cost for this. You're going to have to pay 4 life, and that's not a big deal. You're sitting at 29. It's interesting because in this matchup, he's going to be able to beat you with the Rolling Thunder, but you get so much life gain that come game 1, it's going to take him a while. So what you're going to run into is more action where he's doing this play and using the capsize to bounce all your land. It really kind of draws out the draws out the game and makes it into a long one. But you don't really have a lot of options. I guess if you're running a deck with some land destruction, you could perhaps destroy your own land in response to counterspell, but we had no such luck with this deck. He bounced the Serrated Arrows. I'm not sure that was such a good play on his part. If I were him, I would have just kept bouncing lands. He's going to be able to do that anyways, and right here, I could have replayed Serrated Arrows. There's really no other choices. He's not going to have the creature package. Here you see he tries to kill the Fume Spitter with Stagger Shock, and he will end up getting that countered. And this is what I was talking about with the capsize. In response to Stagger Shock, I sacrificed the Fume Spitter and I put the 1/1 counter on itself. You are allowed to do that, which kills the Fume Spitter, and that cancels the Stagger Shock from going into Rebound. Here I have to start getting rid of lands, and honestly, you're going to want to just get rid of some of these tapped lands. I got rid of the Nausea a while ago just because, they're useless cards. Here the Muldrifters are coming out, and you have a choice. You can sit here, and I can Echoing Decay at this point and kill 2. If you want, you can save it for later on, when you're finally going to be out of lands. My choice was to kill him now because that leaves the opportunity for me to make another play later on if I have the mana available and get a Missionary or something. But he does throw out Condescend, and it does not go through. So all I can do now, put out arrows, and at least make them smaller. He's only going to be using them to kind of whittle me down for his 2 Rolling Thunders, get me in burn range. Though it's not terribly hard with the counter posts going on. Those posts right now are worth 5 mana each, so these 3 lands alone are going to produce 15. And he only needs the 2 red, which he has, so not a big deal. Here I get the Bog, which, like I said, is actually pretty good in this matchup because you can get rid of those spells. And I thought in response to it, I would prevent some land destruction, quote unquote, through capsize, because he would flash back some of his cards there, but he chose not to. I think that was kind of a poor play on his part. He let a whole bunch of spells just go to the wayside just because. And you see there, that was an opportunity. What happened there is I had the Serrated Arrows in play. I put a counter on Muldrifter. He chose to capsize the arrows. So on my next turn, I of course was going to replay it, and he decided to counter that. That's fine. But what he did afterwards is he returned the 1/1 Muldrifter to his hand, so we can replay it as a 2/2. And had I been smarter there, you see I clearly F6'd that turn and screwed up, but had I been smarter, what I would have been able to at least try and do was cast Snuff Out for 4 life, targeting that Muldrifter, and hope that he doesn't have a counter spell in his hand. He was sitting at 5 cards, and I knew one of those cards was Capsize, so I had a chance there that in those 4 cards he did not have a counterspell. It's a chance that you have to take. Even if he has that counterspell, you have to make that play, because if he doesn't have the counterspell and you successfully get rid of that Capsize, what you're going to be able to do is play one of your Ravnica lands. Right now, you want to play the basic lands instead because you can get more of them and usable on the turn that they come into play. But I would have been able to get the Ravnica land in play, bounce the Bog, and then remove it, so that if he had the wall, it would not be able to return to hand. It would not be an option that was available for him. Or I could have used the Skyfisher in this case. I would have drawn the Skyfisher and returned the Bog and could have played it to make sure that doesn't come back to bite me. Instead, I misplayed. I'm going to go on the assumption that he had a counterspell anyways, and it would have not worked, because that just makes me feel better about myself for messing that up, but that's alright. At this point in time, like I tell everyone, I play these games like they're a tournament game, so I go through and I'm stalling for time, basically. He's already eaten off 16 minutes on my clock. This game is pretty much won. I find it a little hard to believe he's down to 12 cards in library, that he doesn't have the second Rolling Thunder in hand to get this win. He's pretty close to the 21 mana he needs to get that off successfully, but it never comes at this point. So I'm willing to play lands, play cards. Here you see I could have played the Fume Spitter. I think the better play here is play the Snuff Out for cost. It forces him to either let that die or play a counterspell, which is eating up time off his clock. Again, I'm going to catch a lot of flack for that, but it is the way I play, so it's how it is. He's going to keep capsizing. You see he throws in a Burst Lightning. He's actually, I think, running kind of a heavier burn package than most versions of the Izzet Control deck do, but that's, completely his choice. He's going to actually be able to beat me down with the Muldrifters in just 2 turns, but, like I said, stall for time, going to use them to slow him down, play lands. I know that where I'm sitting now, I do not have any basic lands in deck really to make it worth playing Evolving Wilds. If I did play the Wilds, I would just leave it in play, and if he tried to capsize it, then sacrifice it, but I don't think he would be stupid enough to actually target the Wilds with capsize. Maybe he would have, who knows, but anyways, this would have come down to, like I said, if I had played that Snuff Out, then it would have been an issue. Here I get the Bog. You see just what I was talking about earlier. I can get rid of things like Mystic Teachings, so the Bog is actually not a dead card in this matchup, as it may be in some others. At this point in time, I'm more than happy to let him bounce my remaining 3 lands. Go back to eating up time off his clock. All he has to do is pass the turn and attack. And he doesn't. He's going to sit here and bounce lands and cast spells, and, feel free. This game I did actually go on to win Game 2, and then Game 3 he timed out, because you see he ends here with 12 minutes. So there was very little he could do. Let's take a look at the counter options for this deck. They're actually pretty good. Like I said, you're sitting pretty well when it comes to Game 2 and 3 with this deck. You have some decent options. I apologize, I should have had this open already. But you have some decent options when it comes to sideboarding against Izzet Control. Move this up so we can get a better look. Okay, so what you can bring in here, clearly the Prismatic Strands. His big win condition is going to be the Rolling Thunder, so you're basically sideboarding against that. You can bring in Prismatic Strands to prevent that damage. It will also, in this case, prevent the Muldrifter beatdown. You can, if you have to, use it for blue instead of red, and prevent anywhere from 2 to 8 damage. The next thing you're going to want to bring in is the Hydroblasts. Clearly that is the big answer for, the Rolling Thunders. But just be knowledgeable. They're probably going to be smart. They have Pyroblast in their sideboard. They will probably bring it in, so you can run into kind of a counter battle, which you'll see in the next one on the end. But you want to bring in the Hydroblasts either way. The next big thing you want to combat after bringing those in for Rolling Thunder is Capsize, because those 2 things are really going to be your downfall in this matchup. So that's where you're going to bring in all 3 negates, bring in both dispels. This isn't really hard to do as far as finding stuff to come out, especially in this matchup. I know my opponent is playing a version that is just Muldrifters, so I'm bringing out the Serrated Arrows. Those are going to be a little too slow. You're bringing out 2 Nausea. It's not a big deal. Other things that can come out include the Fume Spitters, Diabolic Edict. I would leave the Echoing Decay in place. It works out decently with the Muldrifters since they are only a 2 toughness creature, and very likely to come out in multiples. So it's not a bad thing to leave those in where you can. But yeah, these are the big answers right here, are going to be pretty much all your non-creature kills. leave the Doomblades, leave the Crypt Rats, leave the Edicts, but bring in all of your other spells here. Alright, so let's take a look at this second game, and this was game 2 of this matchup. The first game, he did some capsizes. It was a little bit of an issue, but he did win on the back of Rolling Thunder. This is a pretty good start. I've got the Rift Watcher for the early play. It's not a missionary, but I get my white land so that I have it available. It was maybe a little stupid on my part because you have this option here. You can search out a white land and hope that you top deck a missionary, and then you have the mana available to play that missionary. But most likely what you're going to run into is this, where you have this land, and I'm going to end up playing it on the second turn here. And then the plains is useless. I may have wanted to find instead an island. Like I said, you want to build towards having 2 ofs on every color. So I think maybe an island would have been a better search there, but this is coming off of a game 1. Like I said, I had to mulligan down to 4 cards before I got a land, and then I had to play a Skyfisher, which just screwed my mana that much more. I also got stuck in just white and blue land for a majority of that game. It was just not pretty. So you see here just a note, this is a different version of this deck. It does run Expedition Map. You see that in an occasional version to search out the Cloud Post, to just kind of to speed up the Izzet Control game. Here I have the option. I got some card draw is going to be good. I have the Teachings. No real point in using that just yet. Don't have the mana just yet for Muldrifter, so you hope that you get the land play. The land that you can play, to get the Muldrifter. Here it doesn't happen. I get the Aqueduct, but I already played a land this turn, so I'm not going to be able to play that till my next turn, and since it comes into play tapped, I will not be able to play a Muldrifter. But that's okay, because you can just sit and you hope for a top deck of a basic land, which you do not get. But we have options. We have the Oracle, we have the Deep Analysis, and this will be the last turn for the Skyfisher. We're going to hope that we can find a Blink in whichever choice you get. Yeah, I did choose to play the Oracle. I think it's a smarter move. You're sitting at 8 cards. If you play the Analysis, you're looking at having to discard quite a few. By playing the Oracle, I get the choice, and you see I did find a Blink. So I'm of course going to take that to hand, and now I'm only going to be forced to discard 1 card after playing the land. I am getting rid of some of the kill spells. Doomblades, I did bring him in. Oh, this must be... yeah, if you're playing, he is going to be a more creature-heavy version of this deck. There's a 9-creature version that has the Crushers, which I did see the Crusher in Game 1. If you have the Crushers, then what you want to do is, instead of leaving the Echoing Decays, take out the Echoing Decays and replace them with Doomblades. That will be a much better choice in this matchup. I'm glad I saw that. So I can mention this, because that -2/-2 is going to be useless. You definitely want to bring in Doomblade so that you can target it and bring it down, hopefully against a counterspell. So here I try to blink my Rift Watcher, but unsurprisingly he has a counterspell, and he is going to be able to stop that from occurring. I do choose to use the Doomblade here. I figure I want to at the very least get through my Oracle damage. But the Rift Watcher is going to die, and now, because I have chosen to blink, I did not have the mana to play the Muldrifter. So it wasn't really a big deal to play the Doomblade. I would have been able to use Deep Analysis, but I drew the Terramorphic, and I always say that I like to thin land out of my deck, because I don't like the mid to late game land draw. You do occasionally hit land pockets, and it's trouble. It sucks. What you want to instead do is draw some card draw, so you can get that advantage back and actually do something. My opponent here, it's going to suck. You don't think Capsize is bad enough. This deck does have Earth Rift in the sideboard, so he is smart. He does realize the capsize is kind of the downfall of this deck. Um, it's kind of a similar play if he's playing against the Fissure Storm deck. They really rely on these double Ravnica lands, so when you bring in the Earth Rift, you bring in the capsizes, you can get rid of these land, and you'll really stall up my mana play. Um, but I could still have the basic lands, and I can play Muldrifters at this point. So it doesn't hurt me too much, but you do have to be aware again, this flashback as well. And that is a pretty reachable goal thanks to the cloud posts. So I try to get the Muldrifters in, more counter spells, but at the very least, it's eating up those cards. And I can hope that when I play Muldrifter next turn, it does not meet counterspell. And here you see he gets a second Earth Rift. It's pretty brutal. I now cannot play the Muldrifter, but I did top deck the Bog, and again, this is a good matchup for the Bog because now you see what I'm going to be able to get rid of. He's completely tapped out, so he has no choices here, but I'm going to get rid of not only the 2 Earth Rifts, there is a Deep Analysis, there is a Firebolt, and these are going to go away, not to mention any of these other spells that he would have been able to bring back with the Wall. And I do know this opponent is playing the Wall version. Now, because I decided to play that, I still want the card draw. I have to use the Deep Analysis from the graveyard. Not a big deal. I was sitting on plenty of life to do so. Now this is kind of a misplay on my part if you look, to not have the mana open for Dispel. But it's okay. I'll hold on to it. It will come in use later on against this opponent. Okay, you see my opponent's getting the Muldrifters out. He's at a point now where his Cloud Posts are tapping for 5 each. So this is where they start getting along, getting moving. They get the card draw underway. They have the mana to sustain that. You see here, now I'm doing it. I'm leaving the mana open, so I have Dispel available. It's something maybe you want to hold on for counter spells, maybe you want to hold on for draw spells. The Rolling Thunder is not an instant, so Dispel does not help with that. Here my opponent does play Mystical Teachings, and I do use that to slow it down. He will have the ability to flash it back later on, but that's okay. You get the opportunity to bounce the Bog and try and get rid of it before he can use it. But you do want to try and slow down his draw spells. He does have Forbidden Alchemies. Not all deck do this either, and I'm not sure how I feel about that card still. He does get rid of a Capsize, so I'm happy to see that. I don't know what he chose, but the Capsize goes to the grave, and I'm more than happy to see that. He has the flashback on the Alchemy. He threw another Mystical Teachings there, so I'm really hoping to see some kind of bounce for the Bog, so I can get that graveyard cleared out. And I get it top decked, but I do not have the ability to use the Bog until next turn. I tap out here for the Muldrifter, and you note he did bring in the Pyroblasts. So those do not see play. Now he knows that the Bog's coming down next turn, and he has to use whatever he can from his graveyard as soon as possible. So he's using the Teachings. He has that ability. The Prisms allow him to convert all this colorless mana into something more useful. Another thing to note, just a gameplay tip, when they come up with a revealed card like this, leave it in play. Leave it off to the side, shrink the window if you have to. This way you know what he's got in hand. And as he plays those cards that he's revealed, just click it to make it go away. It just gives you a better idea. I know he's sitting on 4 cards in hand, and I know one of those is a counter spell. Just keeping track. It's a smart thing to do so that you know what you have to do to get around your opponent and make things happen. Now he knows the Bog is coming down. He's getting rid of the Forbidden Alchemy. He's trying to use up whatever flashback he had before this Bog hits. There were still more I think he could have. Yeah, he had another Teachings he could have used, but he left the mana open. He's going to use it now. But that's going to be the last thing. He's pretty much saved. So all I'm doing now, I'm getting rid of this Capsize for the Wall. And if he gets the Wall, then he can't get that Capsize back. You see here again, he brought out a Pyroblast. I drew a Hydroblast, we can tell that I'm going to get into kind of trouble later on with a bit of a counter off. When he does get the Rolling Thunder in play, my only hope is that he is stupid enough to tap out all of his lands. You do run into an issue where they do want to tap out all their lands just to show off the biggest, baddest Rolling Thunder they can get. This is not a smart move. When they do that, they are leaving themselves open for counters without any defense. So we're going to hope that he's stupid, he taps out completely and is unable to stop the counters. You see here I drew cards and I got a negate and the other Hydroblast. So right now, if these are the only counters he has and the Rolling Thunder, I've got him beat 3-2. He'll play it, I'll Hydroblast, he'll counterspell the Hydroblast, I'll negate, he'll Pyroblast, I'll Hydroblast. So hopefully that's what it turns out to be. He is getting up in cards. He has 7 now, so I'm just going to assume he has more than that. And my only hope is that before things get too out of hand, I can draw more counters for his counters. I guess we'll see. At this point in time, you see, I've been talking about this counter package. Now, you want to leave the mana open for this occurrence. You know it's going to come. You're in the late game. He's got 3 Cloud Posts. He's got the red mana possibilities. I'm going to play the island here so that I have the 3 blue that I need to play these spells, and I'm going to always make sure I have 1 extra open. For whatever else I play, I want to make sure I have those 3 blues and 1 extra open. Now this kind of sucks because I have things like Deep Analysis and Mystical Teachings that I could play. If you get any options to search out lands, you're screwed because you only have 3 islands in deck. What you really are hoping for is to see one of the Ravnica lands that has blue in it, so that you can still leave the 3 blue open for this and be able to, at the same time, play these additional spells. So you see my opponent drawing a lot of cards here. You can tell he's down to 12 cards. He's drawing a ton. He's digging for that Rolling Thunder for the win. And it's going to come down to kind of an epic stack here. Firebolt, fine, feel free. He can kill those, and I'm not too concerned about it. He's not going to kill me anytime soon with the Muldrifter. Now here's, I was talking about leaving the mana open to play other spells. This is the one exception. I am at the end of turn step for my opponent. He's clearly not playing Rolling Thunder on his turn. It is a sorcery, so I have the ability. I can try Mystical Teachings. If it goes through, great. I'm probably going to grab another negate or something along those lines. What it's really doing at this point in time is trying to draw out his counterspell, or the Pyroblast. And it draws out a counterspell, the Condescend. I'm still okay with that because, in my mind, it is a counterspell that is not going to come up on that stack later on when he does play Rolling Thunder. Hit the Terramorphic, but again, you see here, I am out of islands, so all I can grab is the swamps. My other planes is in hand. Again, at this point, the only reason to do that is to thin mana out of the deck, and I always try to do that whenever possible. Let's see, another Cloud Post. He's very close to being able to pull this off. And it's within range. It's more than within range. He only needs 16 mana to do so. And I believe this is where it's going to come down. Yeah, he can just... You see, he tapped 3 Cloud Posts and he's sitting at 24 mana. He's going to be smart. He only uses enough to kill me. And I have no options. I can't blink anything. So he knows I have no direct life gain off of creatures. So he plays it simply for enough to kill me, and he leaves 8 mana open. If he's got a Condescend, he's good. He can turn that land into colored mana with these, and we know he still has the counterspell and Pyroblast in hand because of us leaving this window open and keeping track of that. So we're going to start this stack. I'm going to start off and try to Hydroblast. In response, he will go through and use Pyroblast, so I'll click this off, and I know he's still got a counterspell left. I will Hydroblast again, and there goes the counterspell. Now this is the game changer. This is going to be it. If he has no counterspells, I have the negate and the win. And if he has counterspells, then it's game over. And we see it 3 cards left in hand. He did have a second counterspell to end that negate. So it is GG, game over. Kind of sucks. A little bit of a disappointment. He definitely got a decent draw. I was able to avoid the land destruction out of Capsize, but I really got slowed down in the mid game because he had those Earth Rift, and was able to play 2 of those on my Ravnica lands. But I still think this is a pretty decent matchup for you. You have a lot of options in your sideboard. You look again, you have a lot of options in the sideboard for this contest. You're going to, of course, bring those in, and like I said, if you're playing an opponent who is using the Crushers, take out the Echoing Decays and put in Doomblades. So you have the direct kill. Edict is not going to be as good because he could have a Muldrifter or an Oracle in play alongside those and be able to get by, but you definitely want to be able to bring in Doomblades. At worst comes to worst, like you saw, use them on Muldrifters. But there you go. I hope that that helped you out, and check out, I will have a playlist of all these breakdowns for this deck, so feel free to check those out, and make sure you check out the article as well.